Hey, you're listening to Stop the Scroll, a social media marketing podcast, and I'm your host, Heidi Schmidt. I'm a social media strategist and agency owner with over 15 years of marketing experiences helping businesses grow online. We'll be diving into what you need to know so that you can show up confidently online without the overwhelm. Get your notebook ready to jot down some amazing marketing gems, and let's dive into it. Welcome back to another episode of Stop the Scroll. I'm your host, Heidi Schmidt, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about planning your content. So it's summertime, people are taking vacations. How do you stay consistent while taking time off and having that self-care time? This is something that's on my mind. I'm going on vacation next week, and having a calendar that's mapped out is so important. And batching your content is so important to ensure that you can take that time off and not have to worry about being creative every day. Like, oh my God, what am I going to post? Because no one wants to be like that. Personally, I love the quote, and this is 100% true. And 90% of the time, I actually plan it for myself. The other, 10, 20%, whatever, I feel it. And I see it in my metrics too. So I love the quote, failing to plan is planning to fail. It's not an original. I'm pretty sure it's like Ben Franklin or someone, ancient like that. But when you sit down and you plan out your quarterly content, your quarterly marketing goals, what are your goals? So for me, one of the big things that I'm focusing on is launching my audits and more strategy sessions. And I actually need to put out content that talks about these things. If you don't talk about your offers, people aren't going to buy them, right? No, granted, we've talked about social media not being for selling, but you still have to talk about the value of what you offer to your audience. So this is where your content calendar comes in. You set those goals and you say, hey, I need XYZ number of leads, and this is how I'm going to do it. This is the emails that I'm going to send, the blog post, blah, 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 blah. So this is where your content calendar comes in. So essentially, it's going to serve as your roadmap for planning and organizing all of your marketing efforts. It's going to be that hub where you schedule and where you manage your social media updates. It's where you kind of give yourself some deadlines for blog posts and newsletters and all those other content initiatives. Now, if you're like, hey, I want to take a step back in the summertime, you can still plan all those things. That's where batching your content comes into importance. So your calendar outlines when you post, what type of content is going to be published, and it also helps manage your various content pillars. So if you have multiple content pillars, whether it's posting about, for me, it would be like posting about email marketing and social media and entrepreneurship and about me, like testimonials, that kind of stuff, like about my agency. You want to make sure that you're kind of giving each of those pillars a little bit of love, right? So your content calendar kind of helps allow that to happen. It helps ensure that, you're posting lead generating content, that you're posting stuff to reach those new followers that you might be attracting. It also helps balance out, planning out your reels and all that kind of fun stuff. So this helps you save time, it minimizes stress, and it also contributes to really building that cohesive and compelling brand narrative. And it's so important to have that consistency as you're building your brand. So this is where your content calendar really becomes a key tool in your marketing toolbox. I don't know what the best tool to have, maybe it's like a drill. I don't know. But consider it whatever tool you have in your home toolbox, consider your content calendar as important as that master tool that you have at home. So how do you actually plan your content calendar? Well, again, your content pillars. These are the overarching themes, and sometimes they might be seasonal, if you're a skincare brand, you're probably posting a lot about sunscreen. If you're a esthetician, maybe you're posting a lot about skincare in the summer and how to hydrate your face, how to hydrate your skin, that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm shooting off my hip here. That's the fun thing about social media managers is we become experts in everything, and yet really not experts in everything, because if you're managing social media accounts for all of these different types of things, especially if you haven't niched down and you're like, I only do social media for, contractors or whatever, law firms. You kind of become a jack of all trades, an expert in nothing, like you just have all these random facts about these different types of businesses that you work with. Fun fact. If you're like, hey, I don't have a lot going on this summer, I was just talking with one of my teams about this today, work smarter, not harder. Look at what you posted last year and analyze what worked, what got good engagement. Like, know that, like, for instance, if you're a school, you're probably really, really slow in the summertime. So you probably want to focus on attracting new families and also engaging your families so that they remember the importance of learning even in the summer months. So look at what performed last year, especially like those evergreen kind of tips, like the summer learning tips, something like that, and just repurpose it. You don't have to keep reinventing your content wheelhouse. You can repurpose, you can rewrite, you can reshare. Repurposing, I've said this before, is self-care. Creating content is so much work. It's so much work. And it's hard always being creative and always having to like recreate new things. And so keep looking at your top performing content and look at how you can repurpose it. Like, was it a carousel before? Can you turn it into a reel? Do you have some B-roll that you've already used? Like, okay, add some new text over and repurpose it. No one's going to know. How are they going to know? They're never going to know. I feel like I've used that little like GIF before. One of these days when I finally get around to adding all of my recording videos onto YouTube, which is a goal of mine, I'm going to add that meme. I'm going to overlay that like right here. So also in the summertime, if you know that your audience is largely off, like they're not looking for you, they're kind of taking the summer and like it's not their thing, it's not their time. Determine how frequently you want to post to maintain that consistency. Whether it's twice a week, whether it's 3 times a week, whether it's 5 times a week, like what does that consistency look like for you that's realistic, that's not going to overwhelm you, that's still going to drive the needle towards your goals? I personally, and often I fail, I shoot for 3 times a week because I know that that's what works. And I'm so excited. I am bringing on a guest in a few weeks. And one of her things is, well, hopefully, talking about like how it's more about the value that you're bringing. It's less about quantity and more about quality. So think about that. Like if you have to step back and, hey, I'm only posting twice a week because that's all that you can manage during the summer and that's all that you want to manage. And you know that your audience is kind of off and you're maintaining where you're at. That's totally fine. And maybe you've been doing one blog a month. Maybe you want to do two, like the real key to success is just building that consistency. And so even when you're like, hey, I want to take a step back, just stay consistent. Like determine what consistency looks like to you. And be sure to, always look at analytics to see what's working. Look at your metrics from this year to last year. Hey, yeah, I'm posting less, but my traffic's doing better. Often one of the goals for social media metrics, and I talked about this on a recent episode, is making sure that you track the traffic to your website because ultimately we can bring the horse to the water, but you can't force it to drink. So social media is a tool to drive traffic to your website. It's a tool for that. So you want to make sure that it's doing that. And if you posted 5 times a week, but you got garbage traffic, and now you're posting 3 times a week and your traffic is actually growing from social media, like what's changed? Analyze that. Look at your best performing content from last year to see what got good engagement, what actually drove traffic, what actually delivered results that you can attribute back to your social media efforts. So personally, to plan my content, I like to use Loomly to plan out all my social media content. I use Notion to kind of plan my longer form content. And Airtable is kind of how I manage my podcast and ideas and all that brainstorming and all that goes there. So if you need a planner, use one of those because you need something to organize your thoughts. And I've also used Google Sheets. I have one that you can download. I'll drop the link in the show notes. But don't be afraid to be aspirational. Know your limits. It's, I don't know. I like summer to kind of step back, to be able to take summer Fridays. Are those still a thing anymore? Like, we used to have those when I worked at a nonprofit in DC many, 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 many moons ago, where we get off at like 1, 2 o'clock on Fridays between Memorial Day and Labor Day. I loved summer Fridays. I aspire to take summer Fridays. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. But one day I'll be able to spend Friday afternoons, whacking some balls at the golf course. So that's really how you plan your content calendar. Those are my tips to plan your content calendar. So, as I said, consider your goals, consider your capacity for executing towards those goals. Maybe instead of generating 10 leads in the month of July, maybe focus more on increasing engagement. Maybe you're like, hey, I just want to increase engagement by 20%, or I want to grow my followers by 5%. Something like that, that's maybe a little bit more realistic because you know that your audience isn't super engaged and they're probably not buying. So maybe now is not a good time to launch a new course. So thinking about that and creating your content, think about your channels. Like if you're currently posting on, 5 different channels, maybe scale it back to 3. Maybe now, midway through the year, is a good time to look at the channels that are actually delivering solid results for you. Like, is TikTok just not even doing anything for you if you're on TikTok? Maybe it's time to just be like, hey, I'm just gonna leave this here. It's not doing anything for me. It's not bringing me joy. It's not filling my cup. It's not giving me leads. It's not driving traffic. Whatever it is that you're seeking, maybe it's a good time to step back. So another solid thing for having your content calendar, I was just thinking about this, is it gives you the chance to track those little, fun social media holidays and events and observance days, like National Hug Your Cat Day, which was the other day before I recorded this, and it made me miss my cat a lot. But tracking those days that are relevant to your brand, if they don't feel relevant to your brand, just don't post about them. Straight up, like, not every holiday needs a post. Make sure it feels on brand to you. Like I have a client who I was like, hey, are we doing Mother's Day, Father's Day? And they're like, not really something that our audience, our team is really going to care about. That's not where they're going for it. They mostly post on LinkedIn. So we decided to skip it. Other clients, same industry, they're like, yeah, absolutely. We want to post about Father's Day. It's all about what's on brand for you when it comes to those social media holidays. But I will say, if there are some that are on brand, they're a really fun way to fill up your content calendar. And if you can tie it into some of that relatable content that we talked about before, like behind the scenes, more personalized content, like talk about how it relates back to your brand. You don't just need to post about, National Cat Day if no one on your team has a freaking cat, like it just doesn't, the math ain't math in there. So make sure that, if you're adding those things to your calendar for the sake of filling in some content gaps, just make sure that it's on brand. And always just think about, I'd say in downtimes, it's also a really good time to check up on your competitors, do a little competitive analysis, like those kind of things, because I feel like then you kind of get an idea, like maybe it's not a slow time. Maybe maybe I don't know my audience as well as I thought I did. I don't know. But it's a good time to kind of just have an idea of some of that market research. I hope that was helpful. I feel like this is a shorter episode. Maybe not. Happy June. We're now solidly into June. This is my 11th episode, so I've made it past the 10 episode hump. I'm really excited to bring on some amazing guests in the next month or two to talk strategy, to talk all fun things, SEO, email, all of the fun things. I think y'all are going to find them valuable, I hope. Thank you so much for listening. As always, if you like what you're hearing, please be sure to leave a review. Reviews, help me get in front of more people who would hopefully find my content valuable. And connect with me on Instagram, visit the website, join the email list, I'm going to share my social media strategy planner, which does have a content calendar. It's a Google Sheet calendar, but it's solid for getting those ideas out and deadlines and keywords and all that fun stuff to kind of get you organized. And then check the show notes for the resources that I mentioned. And as always, if you have anything that you would like to learn about in a future episode, be sure to send me a message. It's Heidi@HeidiJSchmidt.com. Emails in the show notes. I look forward to connecting, and until next time.